Welcome to the For the Love of the Game podcast with your hosts, Jefferson Belfort and Brian Hernandez. How are you doing, Brian?
Man, I'm doing good. Last week, if you listen to the episode, you'd hear I was dying from a cold, and then Jeff, you were telling us, or you were telling me before the episode how sick you were just before this. We're both feeling a lot better now, and I'm just ready to talk about basketball.
Exactly. Both toughing it out. Like Brian said last week, ain't gonna miss a week. Sometimes might move around some days, but not gonna miss the week of bringing out some news to you guys. Some of the topics that we're going to hit today are the Kemba Walker situation that's brewing for the New York Knicks right now, with him heading out of the rotation. The Bulls and Heat's pursuit of free agents this offseason and how that's affected them. And the great matchup that we got to see on Tuesday, and we're going to be seeing tonight on Friday as well, with the Warriors and the Suns. And then some Brian with a couple recent news that we'll go over.
Yes, let's do it, man. I'm ready. All right. So first, Kemba Walker. So to break it down for anyone that hasn't heard about the situation or doesn't know about the situation, just this week, Tom Thibodeau had a press conference, and during the press conference, he mentioned that Kemba Walker is no longer in the rotation. He's not in the starting lineup, and he's not going to be playing any games for the foreseeable future. Now, this is kind of controversial because at the start of the season, Kemba Walker, he got bought out from OKC and he signed with the Knicks, and the Knicks have been dying for a point guard this entire time. Now, after 20 games, this man is out of the rotation. He is no longer here. He's still on the team, but he's on the bench just cheering on his teammates, not playing in games. And who would have thought Kemba Walker, he's a little bit over 30 years old, is no longer playing? Jeff, what are your first thoughts on this Kemba Walker situation?
Well, it sucks first for him, I would say. Like, seeing him get a diminished role, that definitely sucks as a player that's been known to be, perennially he's a starter and in consideration for like an all-star position. So to see that, like, not fall from grace, but at least consider as like a step down from what he's normally known for having or doing is it sucks, like I said.
Yes.
But if you look across the board, there's reasons why it had to happen. Offensive firepower is largely the reason why they brought him, right? And across the board, his numbers are, if not at all-time lows, they're very close to all-time lows on the offensive side of his game. He's not terribly big, which causes a mismatch typically for whoever he's defending. And then you got to think about it. Every game he's coming up against all these bigger players now, bigger guards that are, dismantling him. I don't remember the exact numbers, but there was the plus minus. We talked about it offline situation with him where you see that what he brings to the court is just not enough compared to how much he's giving up on the defensive side of the game. And you love the fact that it's like a homecoming, but it sucks that it has to end in this way for him because, it was the best decision to insert Alec Burks into the lineup. And I think now they've moved on to quickly in the lineup to start off the games.
Yeah, so exactly what you're saying, like all Knicks fans and just even the organization, you can tell they wanted this situation with Kemba Walker to work out so badly. Their entire marketing campaign was around Kemba Walker. When they're releasing these new jerseys, it's like Kemba Walker coming home, blah, 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 all this stuff. They want this to work out so bad. And they tried. and they gave 20 games, and it was pretty clear early on that this just was not working out. And at the same time, too, I want to clarify the whole Kemba Walker situation. I don't think he's the only one at fault, because there's been times where he's actually been one of the better players on the floor. And it's not only his fault, but he's the easiest person that you can choose from to fix things up. Because like you mentioned, there's all the defensive problems and all this other stuff. And then also when he's not doing well offensively, he's kind of just nothing for you. So there's other things you can do to help the team. And you're talking about a little bit of the numbers. There's a guy named Fred Katz over at The Athletic who covers the Knicks. And an interesting stat that he pulled out was when Kemba Walker Knicks have the best defense in the league when Kemba Walker was on the bench at 99 defensive rating. And then they are dead last when Kemba Walker is on the floor with 116 defensive rating. And then at the same time, too, when he's in offense, they are the 27th ranked offense when he's playing on the floor. And then they are 9th ranked offense when he's off the floor. And it's just, there's too many things that just adds up, and it just makes sense that he's the guy that you have to move. So you want to move him from a starter to the bench. This doesn't really work out. And the main reason why is because their bench unit is already extremely solid. And Tom Thibodeau said himself, we can't play 3-point guards. Quickly 6'3", D Rose is 6'3", Kemba's 6'1", 6 foot. We can't be playing 3-point guards, especially when Tom Thibodeau loves having his size and playing defense. Like, it just doesn't work out. And you mentioned that quickly he started the last game because RJ Barrett's out with a sickness. So, but for the most part, Quickly's going to be coming off the bench, because there's a reason why you don't want to start him over Alec Burks, is because the Knicks play best when Quickly and Obi Toppin play together. And then so when Quickly and Obi Toppin play together, that's when they're amazing. But Obi Toppin also can't start because Julius Randle plays that same exact position. So you want Quickly, D Rose, and Obi Toppin all playing together, and that's their best bench unit. And so you kind of the no-brainer is put Alec Burks in there, because he adds some more size. He helps out their defense. He's still good on offense. He has his days. Alec Burks is an inconsistent player, but he's gonna be consistent for you on defense throughout the year. So it only makes sense. And or I guess before I add any more, do you have anything you want to add?
Oh, I think you hit it right on the head with that.
Yeah. So something I thought was pretty interesting with this whole situation, Seth Partnow on Twitter, he had a pretty good point of, so the Knicks, the reason why this Kemba Walker situation was so nice for the Knicks at first is because this is a low risk, high reward kind of situation. Because you sign this guy for $8 million a year for 2 years, you give him 2 guaranteed years, and you need a point guard. This guy, he's not the same Kemba Walker that he's been before, but he can still do some things for the game. That's what you thought beforehand. But this was low risk because you don't have a lot of stakes in him. But if you start playing him more and more and keep trying to make this work out when it's clearly not working out, now you just made a low risk situation kind of ruin your season and ruin where things are going. And so far, I mean, the Knicks lost their last 2 games against the Nets and the Bulls, but they have looked substantially better than they have in the past. And so far, things are going well without Kemba Walker. It's a shame that it had to happen. Hate that, everyone wanted it to work out. It's just that at the moment, there's kind of no room for him on the team. I think something that I didn't get to listen to it completely. I wish I did now, but I saw online that Tracy McGrady was having a conversation about it. And Tracy McGrady actually brought up, he was like, I don't think this is about just them not working well together and the starting unit not playing well. I think this is because Kemba's been voicing his frustrations on minutes and rotations and all this stuff. And that's what he thinks the problem is. I don't know, Jeff. Does that even make sense to you? Hearing like Tracy McGrady kind of saying that.
I guess a little bit to a small degree. Like if I guess in the sense he's trying to say that maybe Thibodeau was catching wind of that and was upset about that. That's why he did that. But like it was overwhelmingly the right decision that like no one's even paying any mind to that. Like if Kemba was just flat out like blazing on the court, like then everybody would look at what T Mac said and then go like, okay, he has a point, right? Or he thinks that he's right. He should get some more minutes. But when you this bad off the gates and you look that bad last year, and because of your performance last year is why you were in the situation where you needed to be bought out, like can't really be demanding so much. Like,
Yeah.
like that you're just not at a premium anymore. Like you got to think of it like that. And you would think that he would take onus in that and like stick to his defensive game and bolster that up and become a piece that is solid for this team, to say, you know what, like at least he comes out with effort every single game. Yeah. But he just did not fit the mold of what the Knicks have. The only thing that made him fit the mold is he was from New York.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's the thing of like, could this have been political a little bit? Maybe. But at the end of the day, like I was saying, everyone wanted this to work out. And they tried so hard. And it's just clearly the right decision to make right now. Could Kemba Walker do better in the future? For sure. And I mean, there's already teams like I saw the Clippers are interested in him, and maybe there's some trade talks with Houston. I don't buy any of this as of now. We'll talk more about it later. But there's all these things, and he could still be a useful player. What he actually reminds me of, kind of similar, when D Rose first came to the Knicks, because D Rose was on the Knicks like a couple years ago, like 5 years ago, on his first stint, and he had all those injuries. And he just wasn't the same player. And then they're trying to make it work in New York, and he played the entire season, but he just really wasn't as good. And hopefully, Kemba's career can kind of have this trajectory of, as him playing in the same team as D Rose now and how he handled pretty much changing his game, being a different player. Maybe Kemba Walker, a few years down the line, can come back and be a stronger player like D Rose is now. But it's just unfortunate situation, and you have to make the tough decision.
Yeah, it's a big ask, honestly, as well, to go from being a star to now being relegated to a high performance, high energy role player is a big ask out of someone that did not think of that for his career, and that's why it's even more amazing that you can see Derrick Rose change his game in that way and be this productive with it. So, and you're not seeing a whole bunch of people turn around and do that. So, it would be a real big ask to ask him to do that.
Even someone like Carmelo Anthony is very similar as well. Of giant star, and we saw how long it took him from being in OKC, Houston, and to where he is in Portland, and then now he's at the Lakers. Like, it took him a couple of tries into actually becoming a role player. He had to be out of the league for a substantial amount of time before it's like, okay, I am not the same player as I was. I need to do something different. And it's, as of now, it's working for him. And, happy to see when players are able to change their game. Kemba Walker, when he was driving to the rim, not the same player as he was before. You look at his highlights now versus what they were before, just not the same player. And it's sad to see, but it's the right decision to make as of now.
Great.
Do you want to move on to our next topic?
Yeah. Our next topic that we wanted to hit was in recent news. The NBA has been investigating since the offseason, since the end of the offseason, the nefarious actions from both the Bulls and the Heat in how they both had signing trades, literally signed on and agreed upon at the drop of the dime when I believe it was. I think it was the moratorium. It was the start of the moratorium, not even the start of the actual free agency, that they had those sign and trade deals already done. So because of that, the league did some investigations, and they have realized that it's time to pull some picks from a few teams. So, Brian, if you want to add on to that.
It's so funny because like you mentioned, the moratorium of like it's so for anyone that doesn't know, this is when they're like, all right, free agency hasn't started yet, but this is the time period that we're allowing you to talk to players and to talk to teams about potential signings, potential trades, signing trades, all this stuff. This is the time that you're allowed to do it. And like you said, I think the time was lifted at like 12. And then at 12:01, we got the report. Lonzo Ball is the signing trade, the super complex signing trade. And then like 12:02, Kyle Lowry signing trade to to the Miami Heat. And it's just like, how did these things? Okay, these things, you just made this the most obvious tampering thing ever. And I mean, it's not as bad as you would think because they so these guys, it's not exactly tampering because these guys actually weren't signed to any team. It's not like, let's say, for instance, if the Heat wanted to recruit James Harden out of nowhere and they're talking to James Harden now, they're doing all this stuff. Like, that's not what it is because, James Harden belongs to the Nets. So these guys, Kyle Lowry and Lonzo Ball, were on no teams. But they just didn't wait long enough to make it even feasible to think about, like, okay, there could have been a conversation here. They just announced it right away. They were just itching on it. So it's extremely obvious for the NBA. But so then what the NBA did, and I kind of want to get your thoughts of like, is this reasonable or not? The NBA took away a second round pick from both teams. Now, both teams don't actually own a second round pick until years later. So we are currently in 2021. The Bulls do not own their second round pick to 2026. That's their next second round pick that they have. So you have to wait till 2026 in order for this punishment to actually occur. And then for the Heat don't own their second round pick till 2028. It's like they're waiting 5-7 years in order for this problem, for their punishment to occur. And it's just like, this is the biggest slap in the hand. This is like pretty much giving the organization like a $2 million fine, because at the end of the day, what are these picks, these second round picks cost? Because these are good teams too. So their picks are going to be later in the draft. These are like pick 45 to 60. These are like $2 million, $3 million. That's where they're fining them for tampering.
And that's, I joke about saying it's nefarious actions and stuff, but realistically what had to have happened in those situations is both teams, both players that made that were the highlights of both blockbuster trades spoke to their agents. Their agents were in conversations with the team that you do want to make a move. And well, obviously both situations were a little bit different. LaMelo wanted the most money. That was more of the situation for him. Kyle Lowry, out of respect to the organization, knew he wanted to go to Miami.
Yeah.
Thought he was going to Miami during the season, but wanted to work with the team for them to get some assets back. So that conversation probably already happened months before that even happened. Granted, that in the NBA, you can't say that. You had that conversation months in advance. But we know for a fact, knowing how Masai Ujiri is, as like how he treats his players, how he treats, granted, there's a few things he doesn't do right, but he was going to do the best in the interest for Kyle Lowry. So that probably was something they already had a conversation about. So for me, I've always thought, like, I really don't see the problem with tampering. Granted, you don't want a whole bunch of super teams forming in the league where now it's hard for organizations to grow and see top talent on their team. Granted, I understand that. But at the same time, I do think that um, try to make the perceived not seem to seem that it's not perceivable
Yeah.
is kind of ridiculous to me, because we know they have these conversations. The NBA knows they have this conversations. We just have to act like it's a speakeasy and allow for it to happen in secrecy. So it's just ridiculous in my mind. But I am also on the side of saying you have a set of rules made. You guys govern to make these rules together with the NBA. So there's nothing wrong when you break the rules because you saw clearly what the rules were going to be. And if you didn't know the rules, it's pure negligence on your side, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like you said, everyone's breaking the rules in some way, one or another. But the thing is, most people don't get caught. And these guys were just so negligent and just did the most obvious way ever to get caught. And it's crazy of like, this kind of I feel like you're saying, the rules are no tampering or anything like this. This kind of endorses tampering because, oh, you get caught, what happens? You get a slap on the wrist. Yeah. Like it's really nothing at all to get caught for these guys. These guys are like billionaires, multi-millionaires. To get a fine like this pretty much is like nothing to them. So
exactly.
it's a little disappointing to see like the fines kind of be nothing, or if someone get caught, like it's really nothing, because it just kind of promotes like, oh, if I want to cheat, I just have to pay this much money.
Yeah. And that goes, it goes into another sport in the NFL with like the whole thing with the Patriots and the situation is the Patriots did not get fined because they were cheating. It was because how negligent they were about cheating, like to the level of where they did not care and did not care about getting caught was why they got fined the way they were fined. Same thing with this situation is, you think that in 2019, when the Nets got Kyrie, got Jordan, and got Durant to sign, that they weren't having conversations?
Yeah.
There's it's documented at this point that they had conversations before that, but they allowed for time to subside so people wouldn't say that this is just preposterous. In within 2 minutes, all of these guys signed to one team. Like, it's the try to just follow the rules a little bit. Yeah. And you shouldn't deal with situations like this. I'm so sorry. Got a cough right on the pod.
Hey man, hey, I'm just happy you're even here and you're doing the pod. But I completely agree. It's kind of it's a little silly to see that's all they get for this. But hey, it is what it is. Move on. These guys are on their team regardless, and we're seeing how it's working out for them. It's working out for both teams pretty well. So happy to see. Just want to see more competition at the end of the day. So do you want to move on to our next topic?
Yes. Our next topic is the Warriors and the Suns. Tonight, we're about to see a very, very good treat. The NBA decided, well, the ESPN executives decided that they were going to slate off the Clippers and Lakers game. What a fall from grace. But they're moving that game over to slate the Warriors and Sun game, which seems to be the most captivating situation that's going on right now, where you have number one Suns in a position where they are 18 games now winning streak. And the Warriors still blazing hot, but they're sitting right behind him, and they're going to face off again. But they also did just face off on Tuesday. So, Brian, what did you think about that first game, and what do you think we're going to see in the second game today?
So, like you mentioned about, or like the Suns, we talked about it last week too. Of the Suns, like we were like, oh, are they being underrated right now? Is no one really talking about them? And I brought up the point of like, the roster or their schedule is a little bit easier. I want to see how they do these next couple of games against these tougher teams. Well, now they won every single one of them. They've been extremely impressive in every single one of these games. Man, I told you before the season when Mikal Bridges signed his extension, I was like, I think this is the steal. Mikal Bridges is one of the most important players you can have on your team. This guy fits on any single team that he'll be on. You always need a guy like him. He's the ultimate glue guy, and what we just saw him do to Steph Curry in this last game was incredible. Man, these Suns are insane. I'm excited to see how Steph Curry prepares for this next game and how he adjusts to the defense. But man, this Suns team can defend. Especially, it's not just like, all right, they're defending really well against, average teams. They defended extremely well against the Nets, who are a top 5 offense, and then they defended extremely well against the Warriors, who are the number 1 offense. These guys are insane. I'm so excited for this game.
Yeah, just to add more to that too, is that like the last 3, well, exclude the Pistons, but the 3 teams that you just named, the Nets, the Suns, and the Warriors, all top 10 efficiency in offense and defense, right? For them to go in there and just handsomely beat the Nets and then, really duke it out with the Warriors, and then, put Steph Curry in a frenzy, honestly, because that was equally one of the worst games I've seen him play in probably over 3 years. And those were like finals performances. That's how long ago it was, right?
Yeah.
So for them to put him, for Mikal Bridges to put him in prison like that, it just goes to show like what the guy brings to the court, brings to the game. But it was a little bit of, they slowed down the momentum of how the Warriors want to play. And let's see if they're able to do that again. I was listening a little bit earlier in the week, to the Old Man in the Three, where Mikal Bridges was speaking to JJ Redick about how, all these sports pundits are saying like they're not where they need to be. None of those guys, like he's like, all those ratings, all those guys that rate us, that say this, like it's not like I go on the court and I say like, hey man, I'm a 90th rated guy right here, man. Like, and they just go like, whoa, my bad, man. My bad, I didn't know. It's not like that. It definitely is not something that they're carrying on the court as well. Is to hell with what everybody else thinks. Yeah. They know that they can do it. They did it last year. There's no greater momentum other than actually doing it. And it's the reason why you see, like, even look at like the Bucks, they're slating, yes, granted, a lot of their issues in the early part of the season was just health, but they're slating on the up and up because they know how to get it done. They've already done it. And they kept a majority of those people that did it with them. So same thing I see with the Suns, something that's similar with the Warriors, and I see that they're going to keep on going. But there's going to be a collision course that I would love to see, and can't wait to see tonight.
It's interesting to see how much DeAndre Ayton can just feast against the Warriors right now without having James Wiseman and all that. So I do want to see, how does James Wiseman come back from injury? Because I mean, last year he wasn't actually really that impressive, but just having like that big body there, I'm sure he probably worked on his game, even though he's injured and all that. Probably worked on his game a bit. I want to see how he comes back. The biggest X factor of just even going forward, so not tonight, of course, but to go forward in the future of who's going to come out of the West. It's Klay Thompson. How does Klay Thompson come back? Because if this man comes back and he's just as good as he was before, and if not better, the Suns, I love the Suns, but man, I don't know if they can handle Klay Thompson coming back. That's a scary thought.
I just wonder too, not really as much for Klay, am I saying this, But for the other players, how do they integrate well back into, if Clay comes back, obviously in the first part of it, they're going to slowly integrate him back.
Yeah.
But at some point, Clay's going to look like Clay again. That's the assumption that most of us have, right? But then how do you divvy out the minutes for guys like Jordan Poole that has been so sensational since last year and this year? And then you look at guys that fall into their Lee. How does the minutes fall for him? I know Lee's not of that same elk, but how do you move around those minutes with those guys? How do they make them all fit in? And you talk about the front court depth as well, with guys like Toscano, moving Draymond around and then moving Wiseman into it as well. What does that look like? So they definitely have questions, good questions. Let's put it as that. They have good questions to be having about how we're going to fit in everybody. But like you said, I am wanting to see what the end of the season spells for them and who's going to make it out of the West because of it.
Yeah, it's going to be intense. And like you said, if there's any problem to have, this is the problem you want to have, because I'm sure they're going to be toying around. They're going to try a lot of different things. They have a ton of time before the end of the season. There's still a lot of games left to be played, and I'm sure they're going to figure it out. I'm sure they're going to figure out what they want in their lineup, and we're going to see. But tonight, definitely a great game. Anyone who's listening to, we're recording this on a Friday, so you're in for a treat. So, do you want to move on? I guess now we have our recent rumor mill roundup. Are you ready, Jeff?
I am ready.
So, I'm glad we pushed off this podcast from recording last night till today, because we just had some giant news come out in that the Blazers are firing their GM, their president and GM of the last 10 years, Neil Olshey. And they are doing this because this is after an investigation that they did into an alleged toxic workplace. So there's some details about this story. So this is all from Chris Haynes from Yahoo. So at first, Blazers opened up an investigation into Olshey in early November. And then employees alleged a toxic, hostile work environment in which staff members were allegedly subjugated to intimidation and profanity-laced tirades, among other bullying tactics. It was originally expected to only last a few days, this investigation, but the investigation was extended to nearly a month. So this happened all of November. They thought this was going to be a quick little thing, but this happened the entire time. And then as well, to add on to, all these allegations that they're having of a toxic workplace, in October of 2017, the late team owner, Paul Allen, actually banned Olshey from watching games inside the Arena Bowl because Olshey flipped off an individual from the Clippers after Blake Griffin nailed a game-winning three-pointer. So after that, this guy has a history of just doing obscene things, and they're saying he's bullying people and, he's calling people's names and all this other stuff. It's just a toxic workplace. And it took them an entire month to figure out, yes, this is a problem. Jeff, what do you think about this story?
It's just crazy to hear that it has to take this long for people like that to get out of a seat, out of a position. It was, Charles Barkley said a few weeks back, is and a degree I agree with him. To certain degrees, I don't 100% agree. But he was saying that how could you subjugate yourself to situations like this? If you have someone that you have to question what they was doing, was it right? Was it wrong in the workplace? You should say something right away. You shouldn't have to wait, And like I said, I may disagree on that to certain extents, but I agree that in this situation, when you have a general manager that's making life harder for everyone, it's going to make the job harder for everyone to get things done too. Because if this is the situation he subjects to people that work underneath him, what does his situation with the players look like when he's negotiating contracts? What does his situation with fellow GMs around the league to make the right decisions on picks and trades look like? We had a discussion not so long ago talking about how horrendous some of their drafting and their has looked. So a guy that does not have a good character like that, how would you expect that guy to make the right decisions on the type of character of players you need to bring into your organization too? So all of those things are a culmination of, like, you know, if you're a bad person, it's sad to say it like that, but if you're a bad person, it typically means that your work's gonna suffer. The people around you are gonna suffer because of how you work, being a bad person and how you work. So it could be a byproduct of why the Trailblazers look like the way they look now.
Yeah. And I did one of your things of after something like this happens, I went to the Blazers subreddit and I saw literally everyone on there is cheering from the rooftops. Everyone's like, yeah. Literally, I scrolled through for like maybe a minute or two, just scrolling, going crazy through hundreds of comments, and everyone just, let's go. Like, everyone's so excited about this and so happy. And we talk about it all the time. With these organizations like the Kings and all that, how did they get better? You take it out from the top. You remove the people on the top making all the big decisions, and once you do that, you trickle it down, and that's how you get better as an organization. And I'm extremely happy for the Blazers because this only helps them for the future. Hopefully, from now on, they can do better. They can have better signings, better trades, and all this. I mean, it's kind of a little late just because if you think about it, the Blazers are kind of out of assets. So if you want to build around Dame and Dame's prime, that seems like it's kind of over in my opinion, because they don't really have a lot left unless you trade CJ. But even then, how much you're going to get for CJ? Is it enough? So we'll see from there. But going forward, 5-10 years, I think this is a great move for the Blazers.
Yeah, it really comes down to making the right decision now on the next guy.
And speaking of the next guy, there's actually already reports that there's two candidates that they have their eye on making the next, so two candidates are expected to have a strong consideration as the next GM for the Trailblazers. And there's two guys that they named: the Chicago Bulls GM, Mark Eversley, and also the New York Knicks GM, Scott Perry. These are the guys they're looking at. I think it's kind of interesting. The whole Scott Perry situation is actually very interesting in my opinion, because although Scott Perry is the GM of the Knicks, he's not the main guy that's making decisions. It's everyone likes him because there was actually like a report last year of how does the Knicks front office actually work, and Scott Perry is just kind of like on the outside. Everyone respects him. He implements a lot of great processes into how they work, because a lot of the guys there are first timers. They don't have experience as running an NBA franchise. So Scott Perry brings a lot of that for them, but he's not the guy that's actually making the decisions. So I wonder if he's going to strongly consider, like, he wants a bigger role somewhere else, because although he's GM, the guys that are making decisions is Leon Rose and Worldwide West. Those are the two guys that make all the decisions, and Sprock Aller as well. And just Scott Perry has the title. So does he want to go somewhere else? We'll see. Next news, John Wall. This is the time to talk about John Wall. So Woj had a report sometime earlier, I think earlier this week, that John Wall actually wants to return to play with the Rockets. At the beginning of the season, John Wall was like, I do not want to play for the Rockets this season. I want to play somewhere else, and I'm going to sit out until we can find another home for me. And we're at 20 plus games into the season. They cannot find another home for him. We've talked about it in the past. It's kind of impossible unless they buy him out. This is the situation that they're in. John Wall wants to come back now because it seems like he's not gonna move anytime soon. What do you think, Jeff?
It's a showdown right now. Like it's a duel right now. They're both looking at each other. Who's gonna draw the gun first? There's no way that the Rockets are gonna pull the trigger on giving him that buyout. It's the sad truth, but the guy makes too much money. He makes entirely too much money for. This is why I always lean towards sometimes you gotta be a GM or you gotta be an owner of mind over emotion, because John Wall was given a contract by the Wizards that was basically a poison pill at this point. They saw his career declining. They saw what type of player he was turning to. And, the only way they were able to trade it was for another bad contract. That was the only way that contract could move. So now the Rockets, thinking that they were going to make something of the situation, are now sitting with a big contract on their hand. And, typically, if you do that, you don't really see a terrible team. And granted, I see the Rockets are, they've been winning a few games, granted. But they're bottom seed team, right? When you have that situation, you usually are trying to bring in big contracts in turn for assets that turn into picks, turn into young talent. You don't usually see a bad team trying to trade the bad contracts away. So that's why they're such in a peculiar situation where there's just no one that can pick up John Wall, because what team do you know that's contending that has the cap to give up that much players? People talk about the Knicks, which is not feasible. They have to give up too much of their roster to bring in someone like that on a big maybe situation. You don't know if he truly is going to change the course of what's going on. So just sit there, you think about it, and you realize that this is going to be a standstill. I think what's possibly going to happen is Rockets then finally do get fed up when it's like February and they can't get anyone, and they work around buying him out. Or, someone like the OKC Thunder come in, swoop in, and get like a boatload of picks again and find their way into something like that. But the only route of where this could go is either you play him, in my mind, which I still don't think they're going to do, especially because there's reports where he thinks he's the number one guy if he comes back. Then the second one is buy him out, which I think is the best decision to do. And then third, it's just trade him. But who's gonna trade for that guy?
Yeah, I think the trade options actually kind of just completely off the table, because like you said, the only way this is happening is if they give up assets. And I think the only team that's probably going to be able to afford his contract is like OKC. And what OKC did when taking Kemba Walker's big contract, and it's not actually as big as John Wall. John Wall has even a bigger contract. So when they took Kemba Walker's contract, they thought there's a potential they can also flip that one. Maybe someone actually wants Kemba Walker and wants to give up assets for his $30+ million contract. It ended up, they were like, there's no way this is ever going to happen. We want to do right behind Kemba, so we're going to buy him out. The Rockets now have John Wall's $42 million contract. No one's going to want to trade for that. So I think that's completely off the table. They're not, because they're also not going to give assets away, because what do they gain for trading away John Wall? Nothing. They lose anything. And then also they don't need salary cap right now because they don't want to win. They don't want to win. So having salary cap doesn't matter anytime soon until his contract runs out. buying him out, in my opinion, is kind of the only option. It's just, do they want to do that? Probably not. Playing him, like you're saying, they want to give time to young guys. It makes no sense to play him as well. Maybe give him a little bit of time, maybe even, but like they don't want to win games. And John Wall could potentially maybe push them over to win an extra game or two when they're in the tank race against OKC right now. It just like you don't want to win games, so why are you gonna play this guy that's gonna win you some games? It just the whole situation makes no sense. He's probably just gonna get bought out, which even then, like, do they want to do that? Do they want to be the organization that, like, all right, we're gonna help this one? He was a star before. This big player, a big name player. Do we want to help him out? That's the only way this thing moves on. But as you see, even please go.
It strikes me as like the similar situation to when we saw Iguodala be traded to Grizzlies, and the Grizzlies, and it wasn't even that the Grizzlies didn't want to play him. Iguodala didn't want to play in that situation, but it was another situation where money justifiably you cannot trade. You don't want to buy him out. You kind of want to test him out, but you do have young guys that you want to prioritize, and he doesn't want to be around that. So then you're just like staring at each other where you just go like, you know what, we'll just shut you down. And then by some point we'll trade you. And, as we saw, he didn't get traded. It was a far cry of like people saying like Iguodala is just, sitting on his butt, not doing anything. And then he wound up getting bought out. And then he went to the Heat. So, it's a similar situation. I really, really think that might be the course of what happens with this Rocket situation, and similar outcome, he might go to the Heat.
Yeah, so it's just tough there because like he just has all this extra money left on. So you buy him out, his contract is still on your books this entire time. So it's that's the thing. It's a big difference with like Iguodala, who's making what, like 15 million, 10 million a year, versus John Wall's $42 million for the next 2 years. Or 42 million per year. Like it's just insane. So we'll see what happens there. I'm expecting to like not see any movement for a long time. I expected Ben Simmons. We'll get Ben Simmons news before we get John Wall news. So we'll see what happens there. Next, Brook Lopez underwent back surgery and is now out indefinitely. And that was by Shams. And to add on top of that, DeMarcus Cousins recently just signed a 1-year deal with the Milwaukee Bucks. So, Jeff, I wanted to get your thoughts. How do you think this affects Milwaukee?
It's huge. Brook Lopez was a big part of their championship run. He, at moments he gets undervalued for what he brings to the game, but like he was huge for them on that run. I remember once again pulling from something that I heard on the Old Man in the Three podcast was they had PJ Tucker on, and he spoke about how when they were playing, the Hawks in the conference finals, and Giannis went down. They looked to Brook, and they didn't even look to Brook. Brook said, I got this, guys. And PJ said that he pulled that Brooklyn Nets Brook Lopez back for a few games just to help them, get to that later part of the series till Giannis came back, and then they won. So just thinking about how pivotal he was in that series, how pivotal he was throughout the whole playoffs, it is a big loss to have him gone for a foreseeable future, and we just don't know how long. Hopefully he'll be back before the playoffs and he'll be able to add his impact to the game. But with Cousins on the team, helps out with spacing a little bit, but what Cousins is now and what Lopez is now is leaps and bounds, the difference in players.
Yeah, he's pretty much just a bootleg Brook Lopez. It's sad to say.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, you don't want to say because DeMarcus Cousins was one of the best centers in the league a couple years ago, and then he just the fall from grace. He had like a Dwight Howard-esque fall from grace, and it's sad to see with all those injuries that DeMarcus Cousins had, and then especially with Brook Lopez. Like you said, he's such an impactful player for the Bucks, and it's the back injury. Anytime you have back surgery, man, that thing, your back is so important. It takes so long to heal. I really hope he's back before the playoffs, like you mentioned, because otherwise, this could probably affect the Bucks' chances and potentially trying to win a championship again. Next, so another injury news. There's actually a lot of injury news this year, or this week. Bam Adebayo. Bam Adebayo is out for thumb surgery. He had a torn UCL. I don't even know what a UCL is, but somewhere in his thumb, he tore that. And I looked online, approximately, he has a 6-week timetable, but there's really no, he's just out indefinitely as of now. What do you think this injury causes for Miami Heat?
Oh, and it's not just him too that's affected on the Heat. So it's going to be a little rocky for them the next couple of weeks, just for them to keep seeding. It seems like they're going to be one of those teams that are going to take a little bit of a dive down, but in the second half of the season, they're going to have that like steam run, right, all the way to like a 4th or 5th seed. But I do project that it's going to be a little rough for them without Bam, without Jimmy Butler for a few games that haven't had him in a couple stretches. I believe Tyler went down for a couple games as well. So you're just seeing there's a lot of injury concerns happening with their team. And the thing is, it's all the impactful players. It's not really like I know we had a few podcasts back, we had conversations about their depth, but like I really do think that their depth is kind of tongue in cheek because those are the only players that they could rely on. If you go past Tyler Hero on those impactful players that are coming off the bench, like it kind of looks a little bare on the type of players that they're looking to the bench to help out with. And it looked like that glaringly against that Nuggets games that they had this week.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's the depth is like important, but there's no replacement for your star players. So you lose Jimmy Butler, you lose Tyler Hero, who's been really great this year. You lose Bam Adebayo. You lose these guys. It doesn't matter how deep your bench is. You're kind of done for. But hopefully this isn't too bad. What I am concerned about is somehow the Miami Heat, they're always getting injured. Jimmy Butler is always getting injured. Bam Adebayo, he's generally all right, but like you just hope, and especially like Kyle Lowry too, like you hope these guys are able to stay healthy in time for the playoffs so that they can make some noise. But we'll see going forward. Like you said, they're probably going to struggle, have a few tough games, but hopefully all their guys come back healthy. Next, another injury news. His team didn't seem like they missed him last night, but Morant suffered a non-contact knee injury, and the scan revealed that he suffered a knee sprain. There's no tear or anything like that, so nothing severe that's going to end his season. But as of right now, there's no timetable for Morant. Jeff, what do you think about the situation for the Grizzlies?
Oh, it's scary. It really is scary. He's the type of talent that if he goes down, you just go like, well, that's the season for them, and it's sad to hear it like that, but it just goes to show how great and his impact, great of an impact that he brings to the game as well, too, for his team. So definitely rest up, give him a chance to rest. They do have enough of a team, I think, to go out there to win a couple games without him. But if he's out for a prolonged time, you're going to see them, fall out of contention. And, there's teams like my dark horse that I chose early in the season, the Timberwolves, that are like, showing they're carrying their weight now. So these teams are hungry. They see blood in the water, and they're going to attack it like a shark, So you just want to give him enough time to rest, but don't push it too hard, because you could see yourself already at like 11th, 13th, 12th, 13th spot if you do that for too long.
Yeah, I agree. Like, there's definitely a scare of like how far they will fall because they really need John Morant. I mean, they didn't need him last night though. You saw that the Grizzlies had a record. They won by like 72 points against the OKC Thunder. Like, that was just mind blowing to see.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. They were saying that it was the Drake curse that got him, because Drake was at the OKC game before this last one against the Grizzlies.
Wow, it's yeah, that's insane. That's kind of like I'd expect that I'd expect that score, I guess, if like the Grizzlies versus the G League team or something like that. That's the kind of performance you got out there. That's pretty bad. But I mean, hey, OKC, they're fun, they're young. Sometimes it's gonna look really ugly like last night. But they still, they got some talent over there. It's not all hopeless for them. Something that I actually want to bring up about John Morant, something that scares me, is because, I mean, we look how he plays. He plays so explosive to the rim. It kind of scares me of like a player that we brought up earlier, of D Rose. Is this going to be another situation like that? This is a non-contact knee sprain, and it's just, this guy plays so explosive. Can his body keep up with the way he plays? Because we've seen this in the past, and it's very scary. Last but not least, LeBron James. Now, LeBron James, just as of like 3 days ago, we had the report from Shams that LeBron will miss several games due to the COVID health and safety protocols. We saw this is going to happen. But then just as of, what was it, yesterday? This is the first time, there's been so many people put under the health and safety protocols, but this is the first time we're actually seeing a player get out of the health and safety protocols and immediately beat it somehow. And now he's going to be able to play in his next game for the Lakers. So just some extra news. So following 2 negative PCR tests conducted more than 24 hours apart, the Los Angeles Lakers forward LeBron James has cleared the health and safety protocols that James was originally placed under the protocols Tuesday, November 30th, after a series of tests delivering conflicting results. Included an initial positive test, and that was collected on November 29th, and then additional testing confirmed that he is not a positive case. And so the sample that produced the initial positive test was rerun twice and returned 1 negative and 1 positive result on 2 different PCR instruments. As a result, James underwent additional testing on November 30th, with 1 test returning a negative test and a second test resulting in a clinically inconclusive result. This is the response that we got from the NBA on why LeBron is leaving the protocols early. Jeff, what do you think about this?
LeBron is a very lucky man, I guess. That's just what I'm hearing, is like he was lucky enough to, supposedly not have COVID. Even though he tested positive a few days. God, I'm sorry. Oh my. Just a few days had COVID, and he just miraculously, after 8 tests, showed up negative. Last year, during the play-in, he was in safety protocols, and apparently you don't need to, when you're in the health and safety protocols, you don't have to miss a substantial amount of time. You could still play in the play-in game that you're supposed to be in against the Warriors. He's just a really lucky guy. I don't know. It's just I don't know. He's just I saw some stuff on Twitter. It's like about how great his DNA must be. About how he beat COVID. So, like I said, very lucky guy. Wish I had that type of genes.
Yeah, right. I love that. It's so crazy that LeBron gets this kind of treatment. And yes, star players do get better treatment. And yes, LeBron has been the face of the NBA for the last 15, almost 20 years or whatever. It's just mind-blowing though, of like we have these protocols here and that he can, I'm sure I wouldn't be like, I'm sure that he is actually fine to play now because the NBA, I believe the NBA wouldn't put players at risk having LeBron go out there. But I wouldn't be surprised if this situation has happened in the past where you have some conflicting results. You think this instrument that you're running the test on is faulty or something like that. But the safe thing always to do is give it the 10 days. Because if he does somehow had something, you just give it the 10 days and he's going to be fine. He wouldn't spread it. He wouldn't spread anything if he did have something. It's just that, hey, LeBron plays against different rules. He's not the same type of guy as anyone else.
That makes it more funny because I remember watching a game last year where KD was okayed to play in a game, and midway through the game, they took KD out of the game because they thought he was against health and safety protocol. So it just goes to show, like, what type of ruling is this under? Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's not clear, it's not concise, and it's been shown that it's thoroughly not being accepted the same through every avenue in every situation. Granted, I think there is a reason why you have to have a different situation. You have to have a mindset of every situation is evolving and there's always external factors that change the situation. I'm not stupid. I am a scientifically minded person, so I understand that. But when it shows that there's I wouldn't say bias, but it's easy for someone to believe that there is a bias being shown to a certain individual. It does raise some red flags, to people.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing as like with anything in the NBA. You want everything to be equal. It doesn't matter if this guy gets some special treatment, great. I want to see other players also get this special treatment. And if they have a test and there's multiple tests and it's kind of showing that it's all negative and maybe this is wrong, this would, I would like to see that player get that treatment as well. It's just like you're saying, out of all these players that have tested positive, LeBron's just so lucky that, this time is nothing to worry about. And it's, I guess we'll see what happens. If there's any repercussions from this, most likely not. Most likely everything's going to be fine. But I guess the story's not done yet.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's all the news I had there. I actually really enjoyed this episode. I thought this was fun. It's there's a lot of stuff going around the NBA this week. And yeah, Jeff, is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Oh man. Thank God, I'm here. I'm still fighting past this cold. Next week I should be fine. Definitely. I'm happy to tough it out anytime on the podcast with my boy Brian. So I know Brian was last week. Now it's me. Hopefully none of the listeners are the next ones to get this bug, and we could just keep on pushing it towards the holidays.
Yeah, exactly. It's a season that, things are cold outside. People will start getting a little bit sick. So, it happens, but everyone, be safe, be cautious. And yeah, this was a lot of fun today. As always, anyone listening, please leave a rating for us on any podcast that you're listening to, anything that you're listening to us from. It really helps us out. Check out the YouTube. You got our faces here. You got the pictures. You got everything. Follow Jeff. I say it every week. Follow Jeff on Twitter. The For the Love of the Game pod. It's been doing really well. Jeff's been killing it. Just this week, Jeff got a like from the what was it? The Old Man the 3 podcast Twitter account. I was extremely impressed. And it's he's doing awesome work there. Like I say, he's doing awesome. Those links are below. And yeah, this is a good one. This was episode 11.
Peace.